Welcome to episode 65 of Pera's Playbook. Today I'm joined by former nose tackle All-American for the Auburn Tigers, who also played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFL, Benji Roland. Benji, Happy New Year, and thanks for hopping on the podcast.
Alex, I appreciate it. Happy New Year to you guys. It's a great year when Alabama loses.
yeah, it is. I'm not a big Michigan fan, so I was kind of pulling for Alabama to win, but I didn't really want to. It kind of pained me to do that.
Hey, look, I'm a Husky fan now. I love dogs, and I'm a Husky fan. So
Yeah.
I'm a Washington Husky. I'm not a Michigan fan, but I was the other day when, as last night as they were playing Alabama. So I've never pulled for Alabama.
You played for a great coach when you were at Auburn. Not obviously everybody gets the opportunity to play for a legendary coach. Some guys just play for good coaches. Some guys get stuck playing for bad coaches. But you were very lucky to play for a legend, especially at Auburn and just in college football as a whole. And Pat Dye. So what was it like to play for him and coach like that and hard coach and going to practice every day and
Well, I'll tell you this, Alex. Kids today couldn't play for Pat Dye. He was demanding, but he was fair. And the thing about it, what made you play for Coach Dye, everything he told you didn't just relate to football, but it related to life. There's going to be times that you don't have a teammate to lean on. There's going to be times that you're going to have to be a better father, a better brother, a better, whatever, better aunt, uncle. Not an aunt, but you've got to sometimes stand on your. He taught you life lessons, and you knew that he cared for you, and that was the main thing. He knew your mom's name, your sister's name, your brother, your cousin, your grandmother, and he just brought the whole thing to a whole that was very demanding, but was fair on the opposite end of that. But he put us through the grueling. To be honest with you, when I played at Auburn, and you could probably, you know, survey 100 people, maybe one wouldn't run through a brick wall. I'm one that would run through a brick wall for him because I knew he would do the same thing for me, that he cared for his players. He loved his players. We thought when we played at Auburn that the game was easy. The practice was hell. And we were scared to lose because we knew coming Tuesday, our major practice of the week was going to be hells to the wall, balls to the wall. So, I know I could ramble on and talk about him, but he just meant he was like a second father figure to me and to many more because of the way he presented himself and the way he loved you and cared for you. He was a great football coach, but he was a great person as well. And sometimes we miss that in coaching nowadays. Everybody talk about he's a great coach, but I sometimes would rather have a great person and then the coach follow.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's important to be able to relate to your players, connect to your players. Like you said, if he knows about you, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of coaches out there that, well, actually, I know there are at, different universities. They don't even know the names of all their players. They just, oh, that's number 80, whatever. They don't even know what position guys play. There's no connection there. There's no relationship of any kind.
Well, I could tell you a story, and I don't want to get off. I know you're on a schedule. I don't want to get off, but I had a very demanding defensive line coach in Wayne Hall, and Wayne's a great guy, good Christian man, and he just, he would tempt you, sometimes, and if he was on this podcast, he would probably agree. He was a moody guy. If he had a little runny nose, he would take it out on everybody. And we did pass rush one day, and I hit a rip move on John Hudson, and he pulled me down. And we were taught not to sit on the ground, to hit the dummy and sprint back, in case the ball was thrown, and fumble recovery. And we did a lot of conditioning that way. And John and I could hear Wayne, get up, get up, get up. Well, we met one another and started a little powwow between us. Stacy Searles, that coaches at Georgia now, the offensive line coach, and Neil Callaway, our offensive line coach at Auburn at the time, got in between us. Wayne ripped my helmet off and said, "Get back in." I said, "No," I said some choice words, blank you, I quit. And I'm not a quitter. And long story short, I told him after practice, "You put your hand on me. I'm a man. I'm 20 years old, but I'm a man. I've been on my own. My mom and dad, and still lit. My dad's passed now, but they I came over here, but I was a man, and so I thought I was, maybe a young man. And so the next day going out to practice, we were walking out, and Coach Dye was on the far left, Wayne was in the middle, and I was on the right side. And Coach stopped me and said, "Hey, I was pulling for you yesterday." And I said, "Sir?" He said, "I was pulling for you yesterday." And I said, "I don't know what you mean." He said, "Well, if I've got players that can't whip my coach's ass, you won't play for me." So I knew right then he had my back,
Yeah.
So God honest truth, and it's. But those are things that on the field that it was demanding, it was hot, and he would come out of that tower, and we knew when he came out of that tower, he was, he would start practice over, not just the period. He would start stretch over, and we'd be out there an hour and a half already, and he'd start it all over because he was demanding, because he wanted perfection, and he knew what we were capable of.
Yeah. That seems to be a somewhat common theme I've heard talking to some other guys, some of the guys who have played for legendary coaches that want perfection, is that the games were easier than practice. I had a
Very easy.
former Notre Dame player that played for Lou Holtz on, and he said the same thing. He said practice was way harder than the games ever were,
Well, nowadays the kids, they get 20-hour rule a week and all that. And we would get that in 2 days, or one day, whatever. And so
Yeah.
they're spoiled today. And, they think they're not, but they are. NIL money has just ruined the game, in my opinion. And we'll probably talk about that later. It's just, it's taking fun out of what college really means to individuals and all. And it's, you know, I look at teams, especially this bowl season, they opt out, and they still stay on the sideline. To me, in my eyes, if a player opts out, that means he's quit on his teammates. In my eyes, I don't care about the NFL. What would have happened 3 weeks ago if you hadn't if you made the playoffs, or you're trying to get into the playoffs, you're still trying to play at the highest level. Continue to play. You signed for a reason. Continue to play. And if you get hurt in that bowl game, that's what the good Lord wants you to deal with at that time. I mean, so
Hmm.
I have a different taste in my mouth because I'm old school, and I played in a different era, and I think that my era was a lot tougher than today's kids.
And we'll get into that a little bit later in the podcast, kind of the new modern college football landscape. But one other thing I want to mention about your time at Auburn is, you won multiple SEC championships, which obviously is not an easy thing to do, but it shows that all the hard work you guys put in, your coach and everything, it paid off, because you guys won two of them back to back, 87, 88, and then they win another one after you were gone in
Yeah,
89.
they did. They sure did. Yes, 89, I think it was right after I left in '88. So, when we built the foundation, it started in '83. When they won the, beat Michigan in the Sugar Bowl 9-7. Van Tiffin kicked 3 field goals, and really at the time, I really wasn't an Auburn fan at that time. I grew up a Georgia fan. I'm from South Georgia, and that's all I wanted to do was play for Georgia and the Bulldogs. And they started recruiting me in 8th grade, and we had some issues going on down there in the recruiting process that I didn't like, and so I opened up my commitment. And Frank Orgel continued to recruit me from Auburn, and I came over, met Coach Dye, and I really fell in love with the place of Auburn. And but they really laid the foundation for those SEC championship games from the older guys, and that's what happens in a program. You lay it. I learned from the teams, and I didn't get here to '85, but I learned from players that overlap from '83 to '84, maybe been younger in their career, and we learned the tradition, we learned the work, the ethic, what was the expectations, and it's passed on for each class. And I think that's where it all started, because when I got here, I was only defensive lineman they signed in '85, because they signed Tracy Rocker, Nate Hill, Ron Stallworth, the top defensive line class in high school football, and they weren't 5 stars; they were blue chippers. And so, that's where the foundation was started. It just didn't start with me; it started with guys that had been here before me. And we just learned to work and to prepare and to try to get to that goal to win the SEC championship. And I think in '88, where we won it, we probably were the best team in the country, but we fell to LSU 7-6 in an earthquake game, and probably would have played Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. And we always like to make teams one dimensional, and we were really good against the run and pass. but we felt like if we could make them one dimensional, then we had them where we wanted them.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So you were drafted by the Vikings. Did you expect to get drafted, or were you just hoping to get drafted?
No, every little boy's dream, or anybody plays football is wants to get drafted, and I was projected to go in the second round. I got some calls in the second round, and people don't really understand the draft. They can call me and say, "Hey, we're going to take you with the next pick," but something, it falls down the line, and it's just like these quarterbacks; they fall into the second or third round, and so I was called in the second, I was called in the fourth, but I was taken in the seventh round by the Vikings, and I think back then there was maybe 12 or 13 rounds. I can't recall. I don't recall, but I was expected. Yes, I got a call one day from a guy, and this is before cell phones. I'll tell you how old I am. And I got a call, and the guy says, "Hey, man, congratulations." I was like, "For what?" He says, "You're rated the number one nose guard coming out. You're, in the class," and that was USA Today or whatever, and all. The paper, which we don't even have papers hardly anymore. Another reason that I'm old, but anyway. Um, it's so I did expect to get drafted. I thought I would go a little higher, but I didn't. But I knew I was in the wrong place when the Vikings drafted me. And I went into a place. I'm a big breakfast guy. I love to eat breakfast, and I ordered sweet tea. And she says, "We don't have sweet tea." And I said, "Well, I'm sure you don't have grits here in Minnesota either." So I knew I was not in the right place, but it was a great experience. I went through training camp with Chris Doleman, Keith Millard, Henry Thomas, some of the great players in NFL. And so it was eye opening. It's really eye opening, but it's strictly a business up there. It's not like it is in college.
Yeah. So then, you mentioned going through training camp. How did you end up then on the Falcons practice squad after that?
Well, what happens is, they release me, and Alex, I'm not very smart, but I feel like I am. But so I went in, and Jerry Burns was our head coach, and Paul Wiggins was my defensive line coach, and Pete Floyd was our defensive coordinator. And the year before, they had drafted a guy similar to me, a defensive lineman at Washington State named Brian Habib. And so Brian was signed as a defensive lineman or drafted in about the same spot I was. And they moved Brian to offensive lineman. And John McDaniels was our offensive line coach. So I went in and I talked to Bernsey when they was going to release me. And they wanted to keep me on the practice thing. And, I had to clear waivers and all that before, but they wanted to keep me on and they wanted to move me to offensive line. And so technically, probably I should have been an offensive lineman. In today's game, I probably would be. I ran 4.940, but I was real quick with my feet, good technique, whatever. I should have been. So a year or two later, Brian Habib signs with the Denver Broncos offensive lineman. They sort of was a project what they wanted to do with me, and he signed for like at the time $5 or $6 million. Back in the 90s is a lot of money, still is, but I guess I had a little ego, so I didn't clear waivers. Atlanta picked me up and they put me on their practice squad because I'm from Atlanta, I'm from Georgia, so grew up a Falcons fan, so I was back home and all. So that's how it ended up. And then the next year I went to Tampa Bay.
Right. And that's kind of what I wanted to touch on a little more as your time in Tampa Bay. They had those awesome creamsicle orange jerseys, some of the best jerseys I think that there's ever been in the NFL. And the helmets, oh, there it is. The old Buccaneer on the side.
That's it. The old Buccaneer.
Yeah.
That's
So
it.
is that your helmet from when you
Yeah,
were
that's
there?
that's my helmet. Yeah, from the playing days at Tampa. So
That's cool. That's
and I
really
got my
cool.
Falcon one up here, my Auburn one, and all in my office and all. So didn't mean to interrupt there, but you mentioned those
No, no,
creamsicle.
I'm glad you did. But yeah, those are so cool jerseys. They were really the
It's
style was really, unique.
yeah. And everybody, back then said, "Oh, that's when y'all wore those other uniforms." I thought they were pretty good. I really liked them, and it was fun. Tampa was fun. Ray Perkins was the coach there, and Ray got fired. I don't know, 3 or 4 games left in the. I can remember, when they were hollering, "Throw Ray in the bay" outside the stadium, and Culverhouse was an Alabama guy, and Ray Perkins being an Alabama guy, and that was connection. He hired Ray, and Ray just didn't. That didn't mean Ray's not a very good football coach. He just didn't get it done at that level. And that pro level is different. Look at Nick Saban, didn't have a very good career in the pros, and look what he's done at Alabama and LSU and these other places. And it's just a different ball of wax up there when you get to that league. And I remember the first time when I was in Atlanta, we got beat. Everybody was hooping and hollering, "Where we going to drink beer after the game?" I'm like, man, we just got our butts whipped. I'm going home. I mean, I wasn't used to that. You have to get
Yeah.
accustomed to it because in the college level, you're real quiet in the locker room. You're waiting on Coach Dye to say his pregame speech, his postgame speech, and in the pros, it's just totally different. It's like, hey, we got beat. It's 8-5 job. We're going home, and we'll show back up to work tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely an adjustment for you, especially coming from
Yeah.
playing for Coach Jai. When you lost a game, you expected practice to be extra hard, not like you said, guys, "Oh, we lost. Let's go have a few beers and
Yeah.
celebrate." Well, what's there to celebrate?
No, yeah. And so that was hard to get acclimated to is, how to, because I guess you figure out you're a pro at that level, you got to treat it like a pro.
Yeah. So were there any moments or memorable, moments from the games you played in that stick out in your memory, kind of looking back on your time in Tampa?
Well, yeah, it was probably my first start in NFL. It was funny because there was a guy named Houston Hoover, and Houston, I think, played at Jackson State or something, and they called him the vacuum or something. He had some nickname, and number 69. And then when I was with the Falcons on the practice squad, he and I would go against each other, most every day. And there was I don't want to say we didn't like one another. There was just some aura in the air that we didn't, and it was always a pushing at the end of the play or whatever, and who was going to give ground or whatever. And so uh, it was my first start in the pros was against Atlanta, the team that I played for the year before, and they dropped me down. I was playing right defensive end. We played a 3-4, and they dropped me down to 3 technique. And they always wanted your inside hand down, and I was in a 3. And guess who I lined up against? Houston Hoover, and he knocked me on my ass, excuse my language, and looked up in the back, and I was like, God Almighty, is it going to be like this all day? And I was a little nervous, and so Houston had started for years at guard for him, and I used to go against Ken Lott, that's probably an Hall Pro, Bill Fralick that played at Pittsburgh. I'd go against him in Atlanta, but Houston, I just didn't, we respected one another, but we didn't really get along with one another. And so after that start in Atlanta, I sort of buckled down and missed a sack on the quarterback, had about 4 or 5 tackles. And so that was one of the games that really stuck out to me is that, I knew I could play in the league, and people don't realize this. It's just catching the right break and being at the right place at the right time, because I don't even know how many's on active roster now. 53. I don't watch a lot of pro ball unless it's nothing else to do. But if you look at you got 47 spots where you're going to take 3 quarterbacks usually. You got 2 punters, so that's 5. You got an offense, defense, that's 22. So you're already up to 30, basically number wise. And you've got some backup offensive linemen, and all this. So, you're jockeying for maybe 10 spots, and all those guys are usually coming back. So it's not if you're not good enough, it's just being at the right place, right time, and, catching a break.
Yeah, and like you said, people don't think about that at all. People only look at, "Oh, they didn't make the team. He must not be good at
Yeah.
all." But
Yeah,
like you
it's
said,
not that. There's a guy in front of me, John Cannon at Tampa. And John, you think about this. John played at Mary, what was it? Holy Cross, one sort of small Ivy League school. And you think, man, I'm playing at Auburn. I'm gonna beat John out. But John had about 8 or 10, but he knew the system. And I don't know how much they were paying John, but he would make the team over somebody else that they maybe drafted. And it just was. He had been there, knew the system, and they didn't have to invest maybe a lot of money in him or learning or whatever. And Holy Cross, I think, is where John played, I believe. William and Mary, I think, is where he played. But anyway, and it's just like I said earlier, and I've repeated myself. It's just you gotta catch a break.
And it's business, right? Like it doesn't matter
Big
if they
business.
draft you, some undrafted guy is playing better than you, they're going to take him because they don't care at the end of the day if they drafted you or what. They want to win games however it happens.
Well, I just talked to a parent that's kid's going over to a different school, and the coach told him they met with the coach. He's a new coach, and he told him, he said, the guy, they got a kid that's going to Auburn. He's 6'5". He said, I don't know that kid. He said, so you're coming in at a good time because I know no one. So we don't have a depth chart. You established a depth chart. And so, with that being said, is if you come in and do your job and you're an outsider, but if you bust your butt, we're gonna play the best players possible, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that. So when I was with the Falcons, I was playing all three positions. I was playing the ends, and I mean both ends and the nose. And Rick Bryan that played at Oklahoma, and Mike Gann that played at Notre Dame. They had been in Atlanta for years, and Rick. It was always funny because Rick would get hurt first day of spring. I mean, of training camp, and be out to like the last week, but he knew he was going to make the team. He was sort of saving his body, He was rested, and he lockered by me, and he said, what's funny about this game? He said, somebody like you, and I was playing real good in camp and didn't know if I was going to make the team. And he said, somebody like you, Benji, you're playing all three positions, both ends, both in the nose. He said, so, but you don't know if you're going to make the team. And he said this, I know I'm going to make the team, even though he was hurt through practice, but he knew he was going to make the team. And so that was it. So
Yeah.
strictly business.
Not always fair in the NFL.
No, it's not, but it's whatever. It
Yeah.
is. It was a great experience. So your dreams are to get drafted. There's only a small percentage that even have the opportunity I got. So God did grant me, and He blessed me to have that opportunity to play in the league, and didn't play long, but I had to get to taste it, and I had when I came back to Auburn, to finish my degree and all, and I'd had teams call, but I knew my career is hard sometimes for players like myself to walk away from it because they've always been in that limelight. They've always had that ego. They've always had that, that chip on their shoulder that they were the best, or they could be the best, or they were, the kids wanted your autograph and all that played into a factor. But there comes a time when you need to say enough's enough and I'm done. And teams would call me and I'd be honest with them, hey, I ain't been working out, I'll go, if you want to pay me, but I just wanted to let I'd be honest with you, I'm not interested anymore, because I knew I wasn't going to have a 20-year career or 15-year career.
So what went into your kind of decision there to step away from
Well,
playing?
I got to, I think mentally, I got injured one time, and I never missed a practice at Auburn. I never had a surgery I got through playing. I've had knee replacement, I've had shoulder surgery, I've had wrist surgery, and it's all probably due to football, getting hit every play. But I think that, what really weighed on my mind is, I was good, but I got tired of going. I was in Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Chicago, there. I just didn't like the back and forth, and not really, like I mentioned earlier about Rick Bryan, a great player, great guy, great person. But, he knew he was going to make the team, and I had to fight my ass off every day and have a good practice and have a good camp, but I might not make the team, and it
Right.
wasn't, it became down to numbers or maybe finances or money or whatever, they're going to keep an extra offensive lineman, cut a defensive lineman or whatever. So I just got tired of the back and forth mentality of the league, and I don't regret it. I don't regret it, but I'm blessed to have the opportunity to experience it.
Yeah. Was it hard to adjust to normal life after being an athlete for so long?
Yeah, yes, and that's the funny thing, it is because, my first Auburn, Alabama game outside of playing, they have a thing, we played at Legion Field, in Birmingham, and they had a place called a Time Tiger, and I was like, I didn't know they did this stuff out here before the game, to adjust and how the fans get rad. I mean, they're just crazy about college football down here in the South, and especially Auburn, especially Alabama, Georgia, whoever you go to down in this area or the SEC. And I had to adjust to that because I never experienced that, and I still have to this day. People come up and tell me, I watched you when you played. I love to watch you play. And it makes you feel good. But, you're thinking, damn, how do they remember 30 years from now, or back then, but it does take some adjusting to get to because, like I said, you know, athletes are sometimes egotistical. I don't think I'm egotistical. I think I'm confident in what I can do, not only on the football field, but in the business world as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is true that a lot of athletes are egotistical, and it's kind of hard when you look at it to not be when you put people on pedestals and you give them all this stuff and sign huge contracts. And every day you turn on the news, they're talking about how great this guy is and how great
Yeah,
that guy is. I mean, how do you not inflate your own, ego there?
that's right. But and it's not just me; it's everyone. Like you just mentioned, you put up on a pedestal and you're bulletproof. And I'm glad that we didn't have social media when we played in our era because man, there'd be a lot of people probably under the jail by now. So no, but I
Yeah.
played with some great guys, man, and it's Auburn gave me an opportunity that probably would not have gotten it. I mean, I'd have gotten it at Georgia, other schools, but just by playing football, I could never give back to Auburn what they gave me. They gave me an opportunity. I'm from a small town. My parents never let us go without, but we didn't have millions of dollars. My dad and them, we worked. They were hard workers. My mom went back to school when she was older and went to be an RM. My dad was always in sales, and but they gave me an opportunity. I couldn't have paid if you'd have told me from Eastman, Georgia, you're going to go to Auburn University. I couldn't. My parents paid. I wouldn't even ask my parents to pay for that. Now it's a lot higher today than it was back then, but still back then it was probably a lot of money. But they gave me an opportunity and they gave me a scholarship, and it just I was blessed. And Auburn has been very good to me. And I feel like I've been very good to them as well. And someone asked one time, I said, they donate some money. I said, I donated my time out there on that field. That's enough, So, but it's funny. We some of the guys that actually coach me are still in administrative over there at Auburn University. So it's always good to go to a basketball game or football. I don't go to football games. I buy 12 tickets a year, but I don't go, Alex. I'd rather watch it at my house. I don't want to be bumped, and I want to watch the game. I don't want to ask someone sitting by me asking me what should they run here, what should they do here, should they blitz, should they pass,
Yeah.
whatever. So I like my wife. We built a house about 8 years ago, and I asked for two things. I said I want a big shower with a seat where I can sit down when I shower. That's probably too much information, and I want a big deck out back with a fireplace so with TV I can watch my games, and that's what I got.
Yeah.
So I'm a simple man.
So are you a pretty big Auburn fan still? Do you follow it pretty
I
closely?
do follow them. Now listen, I love Auburn, and I want them to be very, very successful. I do follow them, and I do. It hurts me when they lose, like whenever they play Saturday. You know, and Hugh was put in a tough spot. Hugh Freeze. I think is going to be. I think Hugh Freeze is an excellent choice for Auburn. Number one, he wants to be here, and that's what you got to have. You got to have someone that don't want to look the job jump every year when there's a better job. This is a top 10 job. If it used to be. Right now, we're not. We're not a top program right now. But I think what Hugh Freeze has done is if you look at the recruiting, and it all starts, it don't make a damn Nick Saban, if he came in here, he'd lose the same amount of games as Hugh Freeze was. Because everybody is so cliche the Jimmys and the Joes, and that's what it is. It don't matter if you don't have players, and that's what has done to the NIL has done, or the transfer portal. But I think Hugh is on the right track. We haven't recruited well with Brian Harsin. I think that was a big, huge mistake bringing somebody from out in Boise that had never experienced this league like that. You can say what you want to. I mean, this is a different animal down in this area. And so I think Hugh, now we're not going to beat Georgia or Alabama or, Michigan or Notre Dame on every kid, but now you're starting to see Auburn's name mentioned in those kids. And we're beating Georgia and Alabama on some kids. We're not going to beat them all. We're beating A&M, the Cam Coleman kid. Now, that might be because some coaches left or whatever, but you're starting to see the foundation being laid. Now, we're not going to be in the championship game next year unless something falls our way or whatever. But I think you'll start seeing in year 2 or 3 of Hugh Freeze's era that we start climbing that mountain, and eventually, before he leaves, we're going to be on top of that mountain.
And hopefully they give him a chance to build something. I feel like a lot of coaches, they're not given the chance they need. It's up 2 years, 3 years, you're out of the door. When it's a process, it's not easy. So that's one big thing in football.
Look at Sark. He lost a bunch of games first year. Then went 5-7 last year, or something like that. And then he's in the playoffs this year. He's 11-1 or whatever he is. And they got beat last night. You're right. Everybody wants immediate success, and sometimes it don't get that, especially with his portal. You went. I don't understand kids today. I saw with a kid at Liberty. They go 11-1, 12-1, and he's in the portal today. He's going to transfer. Why? I mean, you're a starter. But kids want to go to, like you said, they get egotistical. They want to go to the biggest and the brightest, shiny star.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of a good segue into current college football landscape, and it's changed so much over just the past few years with NIL, and the transfer portal has really exploded out of control. I mean, opt-outs, like you mentioned earlier, which is one that I really don't, not a huge fan of, because you're not watching the same team. I'm a big Notre Dame fan, and in their bowl game against Oregon State,
Hartman,
half of the players were gone. Hartman, there was only one offensive lineman that played the whole year. Backup running backs, just all over the place. It's not the same. And, you'd think that those bowl games mean something. I mean, that's what you're playing for, is to win in the end. But, yeah, I don't know what you kind of touched on it earlier, but what are your thoughts on the whole portal and transferring and opting out? And
I don't really like the portal, and I don't understand the portal. I don't understand kids thinking nowadays. And the reason why I say that, you got kids like, and I don't watch a lot of people out west. I follow the SEC, but I do watch them at night because they're, you can get them before you go to bed. Watch USC, and you look at the kid out there, the quarterback that opted out. Some of these guys, the guy at Tennessee, the Milton guy, and I got a great friend that coaches there, and I hadn't talked to him about this, but some of these guys need that repetition. They need that. They need those pro guys to see them compete against everybody as many times as you possibly can to get in front of that big eye in the sky. You need to show your talent. And and I don't understand why. If you've been with these guys for 11 games, why you want to opt out in the bowl? Why didn't you opt out when you played Alabama? Why didn't you just say, "Hey, I'm gonna quit now"? And I think that we don't hold people accountable in today's society. And I'll say this, and I saw this. I mentioned Hartman, don't know him, but I don't know y'all's head coach, never met him, but he seems like a good guy. But to me, as a coach, and I've been in that arena, as a coach, if a guy, like I said, Hartman, says, "I'm not going to play against Oregon State or whoever they're playing in the bowl game," I'm not going to let him stand on the sideline. You're through in my program. I'm not going to let you be a distraction in my mind. Oh, he's an ambassador for our school. He just quit on your school. And until they do something, this NIL transfer, it's all out of whack. It's kids. It's just, what do they want to play for? It's nowadays, it's not, we used to say, don't play for, the name on the back, play for the front, play for the helmet, the sticker on the helmet. Create your own identity at those schools and all, but now they just got to go to the highest bidder. And, they don't understand, number one, probably tax, they got to pay taxes on that money eventually. And there's got to be something governed to cut some of all this spending out, because you don't have any consistency. And we built a team around camaraderie and around that locker room. Well, hell, you play besides this guy, and the next year you don't know who you're playing by, and that's right. That's just and that's what happens with coaches as well. you can't recruit high school kids anymore because you got to recruit the kids on your team to stay, or somebody else is recruiting them. You know,
Yeah.
so
And with the NIL, I had a former guy who played at Georgia Tech, played in the NFL for a little bit, and he said with the NIL, kids, they go to one school, get their NIL money, and they go to another one. If you go and you take NIL money, you should have to sign a commitment to that school. If you're
I
taking
agree.
that money, now that's your job. You work for that school. That's what you're doing. I mean, you're getting a paycheck
Or if
bigger
you
than
want to
some
leave,
guys
get
in
that.
the
You got to get that money back. You know.
right. Yeah, if you really want to leave, and nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to give that money back.
No,
But I
that
mean,
wasn't John Davis that played at Tech, was it?
no,
Okay.
I don't think
John, I
so.
played against John. He was an All-American center at Georgia Tech. I played against him. Great guy.
Yeah, yeah. No, this was Des White. He was a wide receiver.
Running back, wide receiver, running back. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
He played there in the '90s, and
yeah.
then yeah. So yeah, that's what he mentioned. And I mean, they're gonna have to figure this stuff out sometime. It's gonna ruin the game of college football. Nobody's gonna pay to watch games if nobody's playing in them, and it's gonna ruin teams. It's gonna ruin programs. The smaller schools aren't gonna be able to keep up with it.
They can't compete. I mean, they can't compete. And it's funny that these guys that they're always looking to go. And I don't understand enough about the NIL. So I mean, I know the reasoning behind it. But just for example, let's look at Auburn. We had a lot of fans going from Nashville. Great place to go, great place to visit. Bars, music, whatever you want to do. But you go up there to a concession stand, you get $8 Coke, $10 hamburger, whatever. And those kids on the field are getting $250,000, $300,000. You sitting there paying your hard-earned money to watch some BS that happened over the weekend. You're not preparing, you get your butt kicked. So they ought to give them money back. For all that. But you're sitting there paying as a pro, but you're not acting like a pro. It's just something's got to change. I don't know what. I don't think anybody knows what. But there's got to be some stipulations on if you sign, you can't leave after 2 years, 1 year, whatever. And so until they figure it out, it's really ruining the game of college football, the game that I play and love.
Right. Yeah. It's not college football anymore. It's pretty much professional football.
Free agency.
Yeah, it is. It really is. When the transfer portal opens, it's like the free agency period. Who are you going to sign? Are you going to lure them in with money? You're going to bring who's going to get a contract? Well, it's their NIL money. I mean, it's very similar.
Well, what's funny, Alex, is that it's funny because these kids that get in the portal, they're not guaranteed to sign with anybody. And
No.
at the end of the day, I don't know what the percentage is now. You probably do. 3% get drafted, 1%. There's 50-something percent probably don't ever leave the portal. Number one is if you at Auburn and you get an education, that's worth $500,000 or more probably right there. So they need to consider that. Just because you're going to portal don't mean you're going to get picked up. So stay at that school and hey, you might not ever play, but you get an education. That's going to take you a lot further because look at somebody like me. I was projected the number one nose guard coming out. I didn't play a huge career in the NFL. I got an opportunity and a taste, but these guys today, they just think that I can't play at Auburn. I'm gonna go play at Alabama. Can't play at Alabama. I'm gonna go play at A&M. Some do, some don't. But a lot of them get left and drowned in that portal, and they're not guaranteed any. So what are you gonna do? You can't go back to Auburn. You just left them. Or the coach don't have to take you back. Maybe he tells them, well, if I got a spot, I'll bring you back. But normally they're not going to bring you back.
Right. Yeah. You're not going to get brought back. And if you do come back, I can't imagine that it's, water's got to be a little icy between you and your teammates because you just bumped out. You sat out of that game. You left. You tried to look for something better. You couldn't find it. So now, I guess I'll go back. I mean,
yeah. Well, down today, this is what happens on that whole deal is you get your butt chewed out. And you probably deserve to get your butt chewed out. Well, I ain't going to play for him. I'm going to play Val's. I ain't going to play Val's. I'm going to play for Rodney. I ain't going to play for Rodney because he jumped on me. And we created that mess as parents, as teachers, is all this. We created a lot of this on our own. We spoiled the hell of our kids. I know I have. I spoiled my kids. I spoiled my grandbaby. I hold them responsible, but you know, nowadays you can't get on anybody in a good manner. I ain't saying kick them and slap them and all that, but you can't get on them and say, "Hey, you did this," because they say, "Why did you get the transfer report and transfer?" Because I don't want to play for him. He's too hard on me. Well, you know what? Life is hard. I was coaching a baseball game one time and I walked a kid, didn't do anything illegal. We won the game, and a lady came through the line, and her little boy shook my hand, good job, good job, good job, whatever. We probably did great. And the lady came up to me after the game and says, "My son will never play for you." And I was like, "Why?" She said, "For what you did to that kid." And I said, "What do you mean what I did?" You walked him on purpose. I walked him to get a force. And so he was a good hitter. We won the game, and I said, "Well, ma'am, this is the way I look at it. When I'm representing somebody and I'm coaching, there's a scoreboard. Somebody's keeping score. I want to win 6-5, 7-6. I want to win, because we don't tell our kids to go to school and go, "Hey, go to school and get an F." We tell them, "Hey, go get A's and B's." So that's competition. So we don't, as parents, we don't say so. So as coaches and people, we love to win. I'm in sales. I love to win. I look at a scoreboard. I look at numbers every Sunday night. I want to see what I'm doing against my competitors that I sell against.
Yeah.
So
That's the truth. I mean, I don't think that any new rules they put in is going to solve the problem. Where it's a giant attitude adjustment that needs to be made across every, that's not going to happen overnight, but
no, not at all.
That's what needs to happen.
But that's what happens nowadays, Alex, is that you can't build a team because they signed me this year and I get paid $100,000. Well, they sign you next year and you get 150. I'm starting. You're sitting on the bench and you're going, "Wait a minute. He's making 150. I'm making 100. Something is wrong here." And so, and that's where it just tears a locker room up. And, and I said this years ago, people talked about playing. I think they need some type of money, but they get an education. They're getting a big time education. But the point is, and they're saying, "Well, this name and light, they're making tons of money off me." But if you're sitting your butt on the bench, they ain't making none off of you, jersey sales, whatever. But I said this probably maybe longer, 10 years ago, they come out paying players. I said it would always be a problem because you got Bo Jackson back there running the football, and you got Stacey Searles blocking for him. Well, Bo's making $2 million. Searles is making 10,000. He goes, "Wait a minute. I'm blocking for Bo Jackson. Why ain't I getting paid? If I don't block, he don't get the yardage or the glamour or whatever. I'm making 10. He's making 2 million, and it comes, it's animosity toward each other, So,
and across different sports, there's more money being thrown out in football than there is in swimming or whatever,
soccer,
fencing
women's
or
soccer,
whatever,
or basketball or whatever.
Pick a sport.
And that's the thing about it. We know here at Auburn, we got a great baseball coach in Butch Thompson. We got a great basketball coach in Bruce Pearl. But to be honest with you, they don't pay the bills. The football pays the bills. They keep the lights on. They get to buy dinner every once in a while, but the football keeps the light on. And Bruce Pearl will tell you that. Butch Thompson will tell you that. They need our football program to be successful, because when they're successful, the donors donate. When they're not successful, they're not going to donate as much, and that's just part of it. And that's not only at Auburn, that's everywhere at a major school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you look at Alabama, what's paying the bills there. You look at Michigan, you look at Notre Dame, Ohio State, pick any of these top schools, and football is a major factor. The only other one would be for some of these programs, maybe look at Duke, North Carolina, Kansas. Yeah. Basketball is paying the bills,
Basketball, yeah.
So,
but Duke's come a long way, and in North Carolina, they pay their share. But you're right about those schools. But and it's funny, it should be like this. But somebody wins a national championship swimming, they don't really talk about it. You look at Auburn, man. We got one of the best equestrian national champions. Greg Williams was the head coach. He won 8 or 10 of them. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
But equestrian, it started as a club sport. I don't even know if it's a club sport anymore, but they don't pay the bills, even though they're a great program. They couldn't pay tenth of the bill, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And that's due to the whole monster that is college
that's right.
sports and the whole, you know.
That's right. You're right.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they figure something out just because I hate to see the game being ruined. So I hope they figure something out. I don't know what that is. And I'm not going to I can sit here and say I don't like it, but I wouldn't want to have to fix it either. I just hope something happens over the next few years. Try to bring it back to some kind of a normal.
I agree. I agree. Bring it some normal back to it, So I mean,
Yeah.
it's all, to be honest with you, in my thought, it's all about money. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna tell you the way I thought, and I'm not gonna get in who should have got in, who should have got in. I thought Florida State, even though if Milroe would have gotten hurt, they use that criteria. Well, it changes the team. If Milroe would have gotten hurt against Alabama or Georgia, and they won, would they still put Alabama in because he was hurt? But I guess what I'm saying, it's all about money. You can say what you want to. They wanted a Texas Alabama rematch, so for a week
Yeah.
they could charge $5 million for a 30-second commercial. It's all comes down to money. Now that has fallen. Now you got Washington and Michigan, but that's what they all wanted. I'll go to my grave believing that it's that they want to. It's just like this. They wanted an LSU Alabama rematch years ago when when LSU beat them or whatever, and they made that happen. And so it's all about the money, and
Yeah.
it's all about the big bad SEC, which I thought took a step back this year. I'll be honest with you, first game of the season, I know it was early, and Alabama did get better throughout the year, but I thought the best team in the country, because they played great defense, and I'm a defensive-minded guy, is when I watched Florida State play LSU early the first game of the year. They were more physical than LSU, and LSU has talent, believe me. They have talent. I'm not a Brian Kelly fan. You might be. He was at Notre Dame, but I'm not
Not
a big Brian
anymore.
Kelly fan. Yeah, yeah. So, but it just it's all about money, and it's and you mentioned it earlier. My son played linebacker at Troy, and it's a good school. John Sumrall just left and went to Tulane, but they won a lot of games. But it's going to take people, schools like that, probably out of play a lot of times, and they're just as valuable as Alabama, Auburn, or whoever. But some of the small guys are just gonna fade away. So
Yeah, yeah. You look at the history of football, there's a lot of Hall of Famers that came from smaller schools. I mean, but pretty soon, some of those programs might not exist anymore. You look at
that's right.
where Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, a lot of these guys, they played at very small schools that, people would probably just assume. People who don't know football would say, oh, he must have played at an SEC school,
Yeah,
Big Ten school.
yeah.
No, he played at a little school, but pretty soon that little school is not going to be able to compete, and
Not not at
that
all.
that history is going to be gone.
They can compete academically, but not where it pays the bills, and that's on the gridiron.
Yeah, and there's a few kids left, that still care about academics, but they're few and far between. They're not going to make the.
Hey, look, it's all about them nowadays. They're selfish. It's all about them. And I had a girl tell me one time, I don't keep up with recruiting that much. I have of late because we've beaten Alabama and Georgia on some kids. But had a girl ask me about Ernie Sims. I don't know if you know that name. Ernie played at Florida State, drafted by the Detroit Lions, middle linebacker, and she said, "Are we gonna get Ernie Sims?" And I'm like, "I don't even know who that. You don't know who he is? Yeah." And she starts telling me all about him. She's a big Auburn fan. And she said the only reason, for him to come, he's got to take Bo Jackson's number. And I said, "What do you mean take Bo Jackson's number?" She said he wants 34. And I said, "That ain't gonna happen. His jersey's on the rafters. It's hanging from the rafters. Retired, number one. But number two, why don't you come to Auburn and build your own number? I came to Auburn. I was 96, and now." I built that number. I say I built that number, but that's my identity through that number. There was guys that wore it before me, but I was an All-American, and I sort of built my identity to that number. Hey Benji, you were 96 in college, right? Yeah. Well, that's what now these kids want it for them. They want a number instead of working hard and saying, "Hey, I'll take number 99 and I'll make 99 the Benji Roland or the Bo Jackson or whatever, the Ernie Sims." So
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you, 100%. Well, Benji, thanks for coming on the podcast. Loved talking to you about your days at Auburn and the NFL and just getting your opinion on some different things. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for taking some time out of your night.
Well, man, I appreciate you inviting me. And if I can do anything for you, if you get on this way, I'll take you to a ball game. I won't go. I'll take you and drop you off. I have tickets. You can go with my sons. How about that? They love going, but I'll be here. I'll be the Uber driver. But I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope I gave you some enlightenment that you were looking for. And wish you a great 2024 and War Damn Eagle.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.